Hey everybody, welcome to the 7.7 notes. This is titled Scale Drawings and Models. Just real quick at the top, I have everything filled out ahead of time, but I'll explain to you how I got everything rather than fill it out as I go along. But at the top of these notes, I have some definitions of what it means to be a scale model or a scale drawing. It's an object or drawing with lengths proportional to the object it represents. So the scale of a model or drawing is the ratio of a length on the model or drawing to the actual length of the object being modeled or drawn. The scale factor of a drawing or scale model is written as a unitless ratio in simplest form. Scale factors are always written so that the model length in the ratio comes first. So here we have this map, and we don't really have to read maps anymore unless our GPS isn't working, but old school style printed maps had these keys on here, and in the key it would give us the scale. And so if it says 0.4 of an inch or 4/10 of an inch equals 40 miles, you would measure it out and measure out all your inches and divide it by 4/10 and then times it by 40 to figure out the distance between your destinations. So that's basically what we're going to do here. The scale factor is given, it's funny, it says it's unitless, but I take these examples from the book. The first example says it's 0.4 inch to 40 miles. So really you'll just see it written like this, 0.4 to 1. But I digress. It says, if we use the ruler and measured the distance between Nashville and Memphis to be 1.5 inches, find the actual distance from Nashville to Memphis. So I set up my proportions by doing the scale number on top over the actual number. So I'm using that 4/10 to 1 ratio. So I'm doing 4/10 on top of 40. And that's going to equal 1.5, because that's inches, over x would be the number of miles. So really you just got to cross multiply and divide. What's 40 times 1.5, and then divide that by 0.4. So here's my work right here. 40 times 1.5, 60, divided by 0.4 will get you 150 miles. 1b says if the actual distance between Nashville and Knoxville is about 160 miles, what would the distance between the two cities be on the map? So instead of having 1.5 over x, I'm still going to use that 0.4 over 40, but I'm going to do x over 160. The reason why I'm doing x over 160 is because 160 is the number of miles, not the number of inches. So at this point, we just need to cross multiply and divide. What's 0.4 times 160, and then divide that by 40. So 0.4 times 160 is 64, divided by 40 gets me 1.6 inches. So example 2 says the distance between Boston and Chicago on a map is 9 inches. If the scale of the map is 1 inch to 95 miles, what is the actual distance from Boston to Chicago? So our scale is 1 to 95, so I go 1 over 95, and then so inches is on top, miles is on bottom, so I'll equal it to 9 inches on top over x miles on bottom. Cross multiply and divide, you're just doing 95 times 9. If you divide it by 1, you get the same exact thing. So I just showed my work just multiplying 95 times 9, and you get 855 miles. On example 3, it says the distance between two cities on a map is 6 inches. The actual distance is 48 miles. What's the scale of the map? So like all the other ones, I just did the inches on top of miles. So I did 6 over 48. That fraction is going to simplify. You want to simplify these fractions. And so 6 over 48 is 1 over 8. And so to write it as a ratio, I just write 1:8. So in other words, that means 1 inch equals 8 miles. Moving on to example 4, Brian made a miniature replica of the Chrysler Building in New York City. The height of the model is 15 inches. The height of the actual building is 1,050 feet. So what's the scale of the model? I just did the scale numbers on top over the actual numbers on bottom, and I simplified the fraction. So 15 inches over 1,050 feet will simplify to get 1 over 70. If you need help simplifying your fractions, you can use the Desmo Scientific Calculator. It's an app, or just Google it. It's also a website. That's really helpful for simplifying fractions. So I'm going to write my scale factor as 1 to 70. And so if you need help interpreting that, it basically means 1 inch equals 70 feet on the actual building. So on B, the question's worded a little confusing. It says, how many times as long as the actual building is the model? Meaning convert everything to the same unit. So in this case, I'm going to convert everything to inches. So I have my scale as 1 inch equals 70 feet. So how many inches are in 70 feet? We'll just multiply it by 12. So 1 over 70 times 12 equals 1 over 840, meaning I have 1 inch on the model. 1 inch on the model represents 840 inches on the actual building. On example 5, it says a model of a Sherman tank has a scale of 1 to 16. The length of the actual tank is 584 centimeters. So I'm putting that scale number on top, the actual number on bottom. So I have 1 over 16 equals x over 584. You just got to cross multiply and divide. 1 times 584 is 584. 584 divided by 16 is 36.5 centimeters. On B, it says the width of the model is 16.375 centimeters. What's the width of the actual tank? So I have the scale on top of the actual. 16.375 is the scale. So put that on top of the actual, cross multiply and divide. You're going to just multiply the two 16 numbers together and then divide by 1. So that's not going to change the value. So 16 times 16.375 is going to get you 262 centimeters for the actual width of the tank. The actual tank stands 9 feet tall. What's the height of the model in inches? So what I did first was I did 1 over 16 equals x over 9 because it's, scale over actual equals scale over actual. So when you cross multiply, you're doing 1 times 9 and then divide that by 16. That's going to give me 1.778, but that answer is going to be in feet. So what you should do is scale your 9 feet up, or scale it up. Well, just convert 9 feet into inches. So do 9 times 12 and then divide that by 16. So that's the only difference between these two is I just put in the times 12 on top. So 9 times 12 divided by 16 will simplify to get 27 over 4, but that equals 6.75 inches. So that's the answer for the actual height. Sorry, the model height. So for my last example here, I put this note above it. It says we can also use scale factors to determine currency exchange. So number 6 says, for New Year's, you travel to Mexico City, and while on vacation, you paid 205 pesos for a Guayabera shirt at a gift shop. The exchange rate from dollars to pesos was 1 to 19.88. So that means $1 equals 19.88 pesos. What was the price of the Guayabera in US dollars? So really, I just did 1 over 19.88 equals x over 205, the US dollars on top, the Mexican dollars on bottom, and cross multiply and divide. So 1 times 205, that's 205, divided by 19.88. You got to round to the nearest 2 decimal places, the nearest hundredths place, because we're talking about dollar amounts here. So that's going to equal approximately $10.31 US. Part B says, if the exchange rate were 9.24 Mexican pesos to 1 US dollar, what would the cost have been in US dollars? So I set it up the same way. I just have a different number on the bottom here. 1 times 205 is 205. 205 divided by 9.24, rounded to the nearest hundredths place, is $22.19. So with that, that's going to draw these notes to a close. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something, and goodbye.